This week, we continue a timeline of Freemasonry. We're diving into the language of the craft guilds to learn what exactly was expected of a fellow of the craft. We'll look at what the Masonic funeral rites say, both in regular craft masonry and in the verbose verbiage of the Knight Templar funeral ritual. Finally, Illustrious Brother Harrison stops by with a new amazing Masonic Minute. Did a Mason really write a series of articles that told of bat people on the moon? Find out this and a whole lot more coming right up.
Welcome back to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. Here's your host, Brother Robert Johnson.
All right, welcome back. This is episode number 460, a timeline of Freemasonry, part 3. That's right. So we're about halfway through this cool research paper. This week we've got, as you heard, a number of cool things to talk about. First and foremost, let's address some news and anything else that's going on. So, number one, at the time that you're listening to this, I'm probably in the Whence Basin in Utah. What am I doing there? Well, I'm on an independent, esoteric investigation with none other than Ben Williams of the Rocky Mountain Mason. Does that sound familiar? It should, because Ben Williams is one heck of a guy, and he and I actually talked about this when we had him on the program some weeks ago. And of course, I was on his podcast, the Rocky Mountain Mason podcast, in episode number 18. About a 2-hour conversation with Brother Ben. But we talked about all kinds of really awesome stuff. One of the things that he asked me to do is to write a little column for the Esoteric Mason, which will be a biennial publication from Laughing Lion. We have a release scheduled soon, just a few COVID-related delays that are happening. But it will be a really amazing magazine, and I hope you guys check it out. You can check all the details at esotericmason.com, and let Ben know that you're interested. You can subscribe at the bottom, join the mailing list, and there's a subscribe button right there at the top for you. Now, next up, I want to thank all of our producers, our contributors, our fellows who assist us in the production of this show. Without you, this show doesn't happen at all. You know, the first few years of this, I put together the podcast and did it out of my own pocket, but in order to reach the next level, to reach more people, to have a better website, to meet the people's wants and needs on how to navigate the education and what to do, all of those things required additional funding. And because of you, we've been able to do all these great things and turn the Whence Came You podcast into its own educational, philosophical program where we're able to pull in not just the education, but to assist you in retaining that information with selective music and all of these things. It's a really big endeavor, and you guys make it all possible. If you want to be a part of those people, if you want to be a part of the Whence Came You podcast, producers, fellows, and contributors, head on over to wcypodcast.com, click on support the show, and check out the details. Much appreciated. You want to help us out another way? Make sure you're sharing our episodes on your Facebook feeds, your YouTube links, whatever you want to do. Share, like, subscribe. All of those things help us out. So we really appreciate all of that as well. Just want to travel back really quick. It just dawned on me that maybe you don't know what the Whence Basin is in Utah, but it's Skinwalker Ranch. They had a whole History Channel show about all the strange happenings out there and kind of the magic of the area. And Ben Williams and I are, again, just investigating. We've got all the cool equipment and radiation meters, all that good stuff. Anyway, moving forward. Masonicon Chicago, September 18, 1920. Maybe you're sick of hearing about it. I'm not. I'm getting really pumped. We've got a great number of speakers happening. 11 to be exact. Dago Rodriguez, Scott Duvall, Tim Hogan, Brian Simmons, John Ruar, Joe Martinez, Alex Power, Steve Harrison, Jason Richards, Chris Hodap, and Maribel Martinez. All of them are going to be doing some stuff for us over those 3 days. And because of COVID-19, we've had to move to a limited in-person engagement. But what does that mean for everybody else? Well, here's what it means. It means that for everybody else, all of the great educational programming that you can attend will be streamed live and archived for you for months to come after. And all of the benefits of the Executive Pass will be yours as well. That means a whole year subscription to the Rocky Mountain Mason magazine. That means getting the coin. That means getting the pin. That means getting exclusive coupons for free shipping because you can't be there in person to take home your wares that you buy from our vendors like Two Pillars Apparel, like Masonic Revival, and like Ascended Masters. That's right, we've got Ascended Masters who's going to be there in person, but for everybody else out there who's a digital ticket subscriber, we're working to get you a discount and a shipping code as well. So all of that, really amazing content. You're also going to get your badge, lanyard, and it'll be personalized. All of that's going to get mailed to you. You're going to get this sweet, nice package, plus a commemorative program. So head on over to MasonicConChicago.com and pick up your ticket ASAP. Now, let's get into this week's education. We're continuing the story of Freemasonry by W.G. Sibley from the Lion's Paw Club, 1913. Last week we read Part 5, which dealt with the 3 degrees in Masonry and the later expansion of the Scottish Rite, York Rite, and the beginning of Prince Hall Masonry. This week is Part 6. However, the text that we're reading from says Part 7, so I don't know if it's a typo or if something was removed. But we will continue where it comes from, and this starts Part 6, or 7, the fundamental principles and moral and religious teachings of Freemasonry. Let's dig in. The bitter antagonism to Freemasonry at various dates in its history, which have been related at some length, make fitting particular reference to the character of the institution. Its fundamental principles are belief in God, the immortality of the soul, and the Bible. The rules and charges under which this society has operated since history first disclosed its purposes to the world are the true index of its inherent qualities. The English manuscript of 1388, which says, quote, "Thy craft come into England in time of good King Abelstonus Day," end quote, is not deficient in religious and moral admonitions. The craftsman was instructed to, quote-unquote, "most love well God and holy churches," to respect the chastity of his master's wife and his fellow's concubine, and he shall swear never to be no thief, and stand well in God's law. The Torgau, German, ordinance of 1462 required each fellow of the craft to give 1 penny a week for God's service. Every master was to be upright in all things, to incite neither warden, nor fellow, nor apprentice to evil, and to keep his lodge free from strife and pure as the seat of justice. No master could allow a harlot to enter his lodge, or borrow and remain unwilling to repay, nor could less than 3 masters together judge of that which touched the honor of good repute of one of the craft. The fellows who ate or drank to excess, pilfered, murdered, or disported themselves in the land with ungodly women were to be cast out of the craft forever. When fellows went to lodge, their greeting was, "God greet ye, God guide ye, God reward ye, yea, honorable overmaster, warden, and trusty fellows." The German Brother Book of 1563 prescribed in 73 articles the ordinances adopted by the chief lodge at Strasbourg, to obey which the masters and fellows took oath. The rehearsal of a few of them will sufficiently explain the nature of all. No craftsman or master could live in adultery or pain of losing communion with all Masons. Nor could any master or craftsman employ any fellow who consorted with a woman in adultery, or who went not according to Christian discipline, or who was so foolish as to game away his clothes. All the fellows paid faithfully a penny a week for the sick. Every apprentice declared free became a brother, and promised the craft never to disclose or communicate the master's greeting and grip to anyone except to him who might justly do so, and also to write nothing of it. The statutes of the Masons reenacted in Montpellier, France in 1586 provided that Masons should not undertake any work to the prejudice of the public or against ordinances of the king, that when any master or wife died, The other masters should accompany the body to the burial. That should a fellow commit a theft or any villainy, deceit, or forfeiture in the house of a master against him, his wife, family, chambermaid, or other, he must make reparation. Following these and other regulations in force throughout the Masonic world, in the centuries of operative Masonry, came the ancient charges to Master Masons when the speculative science of the society was developed. These are now incorporated in the constitutions of the order throughout the world, and faithfully betoken its present relations to God and man, to the state and religioning. These venerated charges are arranged under the following 6 general heads: 1. Of God and religion. 2. Of civil magistrate, supreme and subordinate. 3. Of lodges. 4. Of masters, wardens, fellows, and apprentices. 5. Of the management of the craft and working. 6. Of behavior. Under the first specification, a Mason is obliged, by his tenure, to obey the moral law, and if he rightly understands the art, he will never be a stupid atheist, nor an irreligious libertine. But, though in ancient times Masons were charged in every country to be of the religion of that country or nation, whatever it was, yet 'tis now thought more expedient only to oblige them to that religion in which all men agree, leaving their particular opinions to themselves. That is, to be good men and true, or men of honor and honesty, by whatever denominations or persuasions they may be distinguished, whereby Masons become the center of the union, and the means of conciliating true friendship among persons that must have remained at a perpetual distance. A Mason is defined under the second head as a peaceable subject to the civil powers wheresoever he resides or works, and is never to be concerned in plots and conspiracies against the peace and welfare of the nation, or to behave himself undutifully to inferior magistrates. For as Masonry hath always been injured by war, bloodshed, and confusion, so ancient kings and princes have been much disposed to encourage the craftsmen because of their peaceableness and loyalty, whereby they practically answered the cavils of their adversaries, and promoted the honor of the fraternity, who ever flourished in times of peace, so that if a brother should be a rebel against the state, he is not to be countenanced in his rebellion, however he may be pitied as an unhappy man, and if convinced of no other crime, though the loyal brotherhood must and ought to disown his rebellion, and give no umbrage or ground of political jealousy to the government for the time being, they cannot expel him from the lodge, and his retaliation to it remains indefeasible. A lodge is described as a quote-unquote place where members assemble and work. It is either practical or general, and will be best understood by attending it. In ancient times, no master or fellow could be absent from it without incurring a severe censure, until it appeared that pure necessity hindered him. The persons admitted members of a lodge must be good and true men, free-born of mature and discreet age, no bondmen, no women, no immoral or scandalous men, but of good report. The fact that women are barred from the practice of Masonry has been the text for many criticisms and explanations. Thomas de Quincey, in his curious essay on Rosicrucians and Freemasonry, says, quote, "For what reason women were excluded, I suppose it can hardly be necessary to say. The absurd spirit of curiosity, talkativeness, and levity which so distinguished that unhappy sex were obviously incompatible with the grave purposes of the Rosicrucians and Masons. Not to mention that the familiar intercourse which co-membership in these societies brings along with it would probably have led to some disorders in a promiscuous assemblage of both sexes, such as might have tainted the good fame or even threatened the existence of the order." End quote. This is a severe judgment and touched with injustice. There is a better reason why she cannot participate in the rites, which may be found in the fugitive lines which follow. Quote, "It is not because she lightly is esteemed, or that unworthy she is thought to be, nor that her mind incompetent is deemed to appreciate the glorious mystery, or that she's wanting in fidelity. That woman is excluded from the right of being numbered of the sons of light, but 'tis because that man alone can do the work which our trestle board is laid." End quote. Yet there is good authority for the belief that 3 women have known the entered apprentice degree. One was Mrs. Beaton of Norfolk, England, who acquired the secrets of the degree by secreting herself in the wainscoting of a lodge room. Though she lived to be 85, she never revealed what she learned. Madame de Saint-Tralais was initiated as an entered apprentice by the Frères Artistes Lodge in Paris about 1795. Cuvelier de Trie was the master, and the madam frequently thereafter participated in first-degree work. Then, Mrs. Aldworth also received the entered apprentice degree, under the fourth specification, quote, "All preferment among Masons is grounded on real worth and personal merit only, that so the lords may be well served, the brethren not put to shame, nor the royal craft despised. Therefore no master or warden is chosen by seniority, but for his merit." End quote. Another quote, "No master should take an apprentice unless he be a perfect youth, having no maim or defect in his body, and is descended from of honest parents." End quote. No brother can be a Grand Master unless he has been a fellow craft before his election, who is also to be nobly born, or a gentleman of the best fashion, or some eminent scholar, or some curious architect or other artist, and who is of singular great merit in the opinion of lodges. The officers of the lodge are to be obeyed in their respective stations by all the brethren with all humility, reverence, love, and liberty. The charges concerning the management of the craft require that none shall discover envy at the prosperity of a brother, nor supplant him, or put him out of his work, if he be capable to finish the same, and that all masons employed shall meekly receive their wages without murmuring or mutiny, and not desert the master till the work is finished. On the behavior of brethren, the charges are explicit and shed much light on the spirit of the institution. In the lodge, Masons are not to talk of anything impertinent or unseemly, nor to behave ludicrously or jestingly while the lodge is engaged in what is serious or solemn, nor use any unbecoming language upon any pretense whatsoever. After the lodge is closed, and the brethren are not gone from the hall, they may enjoy themselves with innocent mirth, avoiding all excess, or doing or saying anything offensive, or that may forbid an easy and free conversation. Therefore no private piques or quarrels must be brought within the door of the lodge, far less than quarrels about religion, or nations or state policy, we being only as Masons of the Catholic religion above mentioned. We are also of all nations, tongues, kindreds, languages, and are resolved against all politics as what never yet conduced to the welfare of the lodge, nor ever will. At home in their neighborhood, Masons are to act as becomes a moral and wise man, not continue together too late or too long from home after lodge hours are past, to avoid gluttony or drunkenness, wrangling and quarreling, all slander and backbiting, and to defend the character of any honest brother as far as is consistent with honor and safety, and no farther. Disorderly conduct in the lodge, soliciting any person to make application to become a Mason, irregularly communicating the secrets of the order or the proceedings of a lodge to persons other than Masons, or any conduct that is unbecoming of a good man and true, are Masonic offenses, and subject the offender to one of the three punishments: reprimand, suspension, or expulsion. Before any candidate for Freemasonry is admitted to a lodge, he declares his belief in the ever-living God as revealed in the Holy Bible, acknowledges it to be his duty to pay him the reverence due from the creature to the Creator, and promises cheerfully to conform to the ancient usages and established customs of the fraternity. Merely to summarize, the monitorial lessons conveyed in the higher degrees and grades of York Masonry and the Scottish Rite would require more space than can be given here. Enough has been paid, it is believed, fairly to acquaint the reader with the spirit, purposes, and character of Freemasonry, to which Cunningham has given this tribute. Quote, "Hail to the craft, at whose serene command the gentle arts in glad obedience stand. To works of art her merit not confined. She regulates the morals, squares the mind, corrects with care the sallies of the soul, and points the tide of passion where to roll." End quote. Of the value of the possession of one branch of Masonic teachings, Benjamin Franklin said, quote, "They serve as testimonials of character and qualifications which are only conferred after a due course of instruction and examination. These are of no small value. They speak a universal language and act as a passport to the attention and support of the initiated in all parts of the world. They cannot be lost as long as the memory retains its power. Let the possessor of them be expatriated, shipwrecked, and imprisoned. Let him be stripped of everything he has in the world. Still, these credentials remain and are available for use as circumstances require. The great effects which they have produced are established by the most incontestable facts of history. They have stayed upon the uplifted hand of the destroyer. They have softened the asperities of the tyrant. They have subdued the rancor of the malevolent and broken down the barriers of political animosity and sectarian alienation. On the field of battle, in the solitude of the uncultivated forest, or in the busy haunts of the crowded city, they have made men of the most hostile feelings and most distant religions, and of the most diversified conditions rush to the aid of one another and feel social joy and satisfaction that they have been able to afford relief to a brother Mason." End quote. With the beauties and sublimities, the dignity and dramatic power of the esoteric work of Freemasonry, none can be made acquainted but those who witness and feel them as accepted candidates. There are, however, published ceremonials of the fraternity, which, from quotations, may be made. The dead Freemason is always borne to the tomb by his brethren, unless he has expressed a desire to the contrary, and there the world is given a lesson in the fraternity's practices, faith, and belief. At the obsequies of a Master Mason, this dirge, written by David Vinton, an American, in 1816, is sung to the mournful tune, Pleyel. Solemn strikes the funeral chime, notes of our departing time, as we journey here below through a pilgrimage of woe. Mortals now indulge a tear, for mortality is here. See how wide her trophies wave o'er the slumbers of the grave. Here another guest we bring, seraphs of celestial wing. To our funeral altar come, waft a friend and brother home. Lord of all, below above, fill our souls with truth and love, as dissolves our earthly tie. Take us to thy lodge on high. This prayer follows: Almighty and most merciful God, before whom all must appear to render an account for the deeds done in the body, we do most earnestly beseech thee, as we now surround the grave of a departed brother, to impress upon our minds the solemnities and lessons of the day. May we ever remember that in the midst of life we are in death, and may we so live and act our several parts as we may wish that we had done when the hour of our departure is at hand. Gracious Father, vouchsafe unto us, we pray thee, thy divine assistance, to redeem our misspent time, and in the discharge of the duties thou hast assigned us in the erection of our moral and spiritual edifice, may we have wisdom from high to direct us, strength commensurate with our task to support us, and the beauty of holiness to render all our deeds acceptable to thy sight. And at last, when our work on earth is done, may we obtain a blessed and everlasting rest in that spiritual house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Amen. At the interment of a Knight Templar, the eminent commander, within a triangle of Sir Knights surrounding the grave and the mourners, says, "Sir Knights, in the solemn rites of our order, we have often been reminded of the great truth that we are born to die. Mortality has been brought to view, that we might more earnestly seek an immortality beyond this fleeting life, where death can come no more, forever. The sad and mournful funeral knell has betokened that another spirit has winged its flight to a new state of existence. An alarm has come to the door of our asylum, and the messenger was death, and none presumed to say to the awful presence, who dares approach? A pilgrim warrior has been summoned, and there is no discharge in that war. A burning taper of life in our commandery has been extinguished, and none save the High and Holy One can relight it. All that remains of our beloved companion Sir Knight lies mute before us, and the light of the eye and the breathing of the lips and their language of fraternal greeting have ceased for us forever on this side of the grave. His sword, vowed only to be drawn in the cause of truth, justice, and rational liberty, reposes still in its scabbard, and our arms can no more shield him from wrong or oppression." The prelate then says, "Sir Knights, there is one sacred spot upon the earth, where the footfalls on our march are unheeded. Our trumpets quicken no pulse and incite no fear. The rustling of our banners and the gleam of our swords awaken no emotion. It is the silent city of the dead, where we now stand. All rests upon every heart, and the stern warrior's eyes are bedewed with feelings which never shame his manhood. It needs no siege, nor assault, nor beleaguering host to enter its walls. We fear no sortie, and listen for no battle shout. No warder's challenge greets the ear, nor do we wait a while with patience for permission to enter. Hither must we all come at last, and the stoutest heart and the manifest from that surrounds me will then be laid a captive without title or rank in the chains of mortality and the habiliments of slavery to the King of Terrors. But if he has been faithful to the captain of his salvation, a true soldier of the cross, if he has offered suitable gifts at the shrine of his departed Lord, and bears the signet of the Lion of the tribe of Judah, then may he claim to be of that princely house, and be admitted to audience with the sovereign master of heaven and earth. Then will he be stripped of the chains of earthly captivity and clothed in a white garment glistening as the sun, and be seated with princes and rulers, and partake of libation, not of death and sorrow, but of that wine which is drank forever, new in the Father's kingdom above. We cannot come here without subdued hearts and softened affections. Often, as the challenge comes which takes our side, some loved associate, some cherished companion in arms, and often as trumpet sounds its wailing notes to summon us to the deathbed and to the brink of the sepulchre, we cannot contemplate the last of earth unmoved. Each successive death note snaps the fiber which binds us to this lower existence, and makes us pause and reflect upon that dark and gloomy chamber where we must all terminate our pilgrimage. Well will it be for our peace, then, if we can wash our hands not only in token of sincerity, but of every guilty stain, and give that honest and satisfactory answers to the questions required. The sad and solemn scene before us stirs up these recollections with a force of vivid power which we have hitherto unfelt. He who now slumbers in that last, long, unbroken sleep of death was our brother. With him we have walked the pilgrimage of life and kept watch and ward together in its vicissitudes and trials. He is now removed beyond the effect of our praise and censure. That we loved him, our presence here is evidence, and we remember him in scenes to which the world was not witness, and where the better feelings of humanity were exhibited without disguise. That he had faults and foibles is but to repeat what his mortality demonstrates, that he had a human nature, not divine. Over those errors, whatever they may have been, we cast while living the mantle of charity. It should, with much more reason, enshroud him in death. We who have been taught to extend the point of charity even to a foe, when fallen, cannot be severe or merciless toward a loved brother. The memory of his virtues lingers in our remembrance and reflects its shining luster beyond the portals of the tomb. The earthen vase, which has contained precious odors, will lose none of its fragrance. Though the clay be broken and shattered, so be it with our brother's memory. Taking a cross in his hand, the prelate continues, "This symbol of faith, the Christian's hope, and the Christian's trust, we again place upon the breast of our brother, there to remain till the last trumpet shall sound, and earth and sea yield up their dead. Though it may, in the past history of our race, have been perverted at times into a sign of oppression and crime and wrong, though it may have been made the emblem of fraud and superstition and moral darkness, yet its significance still remains as the badge of a Christian warrior. It calls to mind Gethsemane and its sorrowful garden, the judgment hall of Pilate, and the pitiless crown of thorns, Golgotha and Calvary, and their untold agonies, that fallen man might live and inherit everlasting life. If an inspired apostle was not ashamed of the cross, neither should we be. If he glorified in the significance of the truths it shadowed forth, so ought we to rejoice in it as the speaking witness of our reliance beyond the grave. May this hope of the living have been the anchor to the soul of our departed brother, the token to admit him to that peaceful heaven where the wicked cease from troubling and the weary are at rest. In these brief extracts, the reader may find the vital spark which keeps Freemasonry flowing with human interest the world over. So this concludes part 6/7. What I find interesting in it, actually, on a couple points, right, are the explanation of why women are not allowed, which I have never read one reason why women can't be Freemasons that didn't involve a logical fallacy known to be called appeal to authority, right? Which is because it says so. Okay. And then the other one, we've got bandwagon, and just because everybody says so, and everybody says so because it's the appeal to authority. But then it's also a slippery slope argument, saying that, if you let women in, there's going to be promiscuity, which there's no evidence for, and happens even in churches. But in reality, it's a big circular argument. They can't because it says we can't. And why can't we? Because it says we can't. That's my own personal opinion. You can write me an email about how you don't agree or you agree later. But it is interesting to note that still not a great explanation for that, and I never have seen one, really. The second thing that I noticed here is that the author, in what I would consider a really fair article so far, has let his positive influence of Christianity influence the way he's writing the history. He could have chose to talk about any number of the more interesting funeral rites from the York or Scottish rite or even the regular Masonic ritual, but the amount of time he spends on exposing, and I don't mean that in a negative way, the Christian elements of the Knight Templar degrees is quite telling. It almost feels like he's selling Templarism here. That's just my point of view. Again, I'm not personally a Christian, so that's just me being objective and looking at it from that way. A really interesting piece altogether. Next week, we're going to dive into what we'll call Part 7 or Part 8, not real sure, but the text says Part 8. So let's go with Part 8. Let's call it Part 8. That'll be the landmarks of Masonry defined and its universality as a secret fraternity. Ooh, a secret fraternity. I thought we were a fraternity with secrets, not secret. Well, I guess more to come on that next week. But for now, let's get into this week's Masonic Minute with Illustrious Brother Stephen L. Harrison.
Long before Percival Lowell claimed to have discovered evidence of civilization on Mars, or before Orson Welles frightened the country with a mock Martian invasion, legitimate scientists in the 1830s were concocting extravagant claims of the existence of a civilization on the moon. In response to what he felt were the ridiculous assertions, Brother Richard A. Locke of Benevolent Lodge 28 in New York fabricated a story about the discovery of lunar inhabitants so plausible, many scientists of the day endorsed it. Using the byline Dr. Andrew Grant, in 1835, Locke published the discovery in a series of articles in the New York Sun, where he was a reporter, causing a national sensation. Locke portrayed Grant as an associate of Sir John Herschel, a noted and well-respected astronomer of the era, credited with many important inventions and discoveries. Herschel, in fact, named the 4 known moons of Uranus and built a 10-inch reflecting telescope, one of the largest at the time. Locke attributed quotes and claims in his article to Herschel, an act that in our litigious society would at the very least generate lawsuits of, pun intended, astronomical proportions. In his articles, Locke claimed Herschel had developed a new kind of telescope so powerful that looking through it was like, in his words, walking on the moon. With that impressive tool, Locke's fictional Herschel described a moon replete with lush vegetation, running rivers, mountains, and chasms rivaling the Grand Canyon. He also discovered 2-legged beavers, unicorns, and, most impressive of all, flying humanoid bat creatures. Locke, or Grant, take your pick, published 6 articles in all, claiming they were reprints from the prestigious but long-defunct Edinburgh Journal of Science. The public devoured them until Brother Locke finally let the moon cat out of the bag and revealed the story was fiction. Hell hath no fury like a duped public, which turned on Locke, claiming his motive was to increase the New York Sun's circulation, which indeed happened. The incorrigible Locke made a couple more attempts at publishing satire-cloaked hoaxes, but accomplished nothing so spectacular. He died in 1871 at the age of 70, forever branded as the perpetrator of the Great Moon Hoax of 1835. For the Whence Came You podcast, this is Steve Harrison with the Masonic Minute.
All right, giant winged bat people, two-legged beavers, unbelievable. You know, I'm half tempted to get all of these articles together and toss them up for you all to take a look at. But wow, so amazing. I loved this story. I had never heard of it before. Of course, some of the images that Illustrious Brother Harrison has put together for us for our YouTube video of this segment, check out our YouTube channel, by the way, to get a glimpse of that, are the drawings of these creatures. And they are, Jules Vernean spectacular. This is just right up my alley with science fiction, but I loved this piece. Thank you so much, Illustrious Brother Steve, for coming together and for putting this together and giving me a chuckle and also teaching me something. If you feel the same way, shoot Steve an email. Let him know you love these segments. Also, check out the bookstore on WCYpodcast.com and find Steve's books that we have listed there through Amazon. He has written a few books. He's edited a few books. Most notably, one of the coolest things that he's put together, in my opinion, I love Tales from the Craft, and I love the Freemasons at Oak Island. I think it was a really fun read. However, the books he's edited also are spectacular. Steve has a knowledge of history that comes from his editing of Ray V. Denslow's books, who was a very well-noted Masonic historian and archiver and publisher of magazines. I mean, you name it, this guy did it in the Masonic world. Steve has been quoted as saying, if there's a Mason of the 20th century, it was Denslow. Well, if you want to know what Denslow wrote about, it's in 2 volumes, volume 1 and 2. You can get them as a Kindle book, links on the WCY podcast store, or you can join the Missouri Lodge of Research and get the copies of those books physical format with your membership. However, I don't know if if you join now, you get them or not. It may be something you have to request or buy in addition, but those books are published because of the Missouri Lodge of Research. Links back to that will be in the show notes, molor.org, molor.org. That's it for this week. I want to thank you for coming with me on this Masonic education journey. I hope we brought some enlightening things to you. I hope that my personal opinion on some of the things in that paper did not offend you or anything, but I'm a big equal opportunist. I believe in the equality of all peoples. In my own opinion, if you want to know where I lie on the topic, check out my interview with the Worshipful Master of America Lodge number 57 in episode 446, Miss Lou Elias. In any case, again, I hope you have an amazing week coming up. If you don't hear from me again, it's because maybe I'm lost in Skinwalker Ranch or I went through an interdimensional portal. Who knows? But I'll make sure that I keep in contact with you all through my trip, and we'll talk to you at some point. Take care.
You've been listening to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry with your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Be sure to join us for our next edition.